drives me crazy to think that, well, I don't want to ruin everything. So invite her up on the stage. Laura, please, round of applause.
All right, well, I'm just so grateful to be here, and this is an amazing crowd. Thank you, Georgia, for having this topic. I'm going to tell the story about election corruption in Texas and how it occurred in Travis County. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background. What happens if we cannot remove a corrupt representative? What happens if we can't do it? We're in big trouble if we can't do it because of election corruption. That's our main way that we have the government that the people want. What if that's gone? What if that doesn't exist? And I want you to think about that tonight. I ran for city council in Austin, Texas back in 2012. And it was an interesting race. I was projected to win. Polls showed that I was winning. We had a general election. There were 8 candidates, and then a runoff, me and my opponent. And the Democrats in Austin, Texas, ran this 25-year-old candidate in my district and for city council. They moved him in 2 weeks before the deadline. And I was slotted to win. I was expected to win. The polls showed it. We had electioneers on election night at every single precinct in my district. And people were calling us, "You're winning, Laura. We're high-fiving. People are hugging us. You got this in the bag." The results come in. My 25-year-old atheist opponent beat me 2-1. That doesn't work. My district was one of the poorest in Austin. And I'll tell you one thing, low-income families don't have the privilege of being atheist. They would not vote for an atheist. There's no way. There were 50 churches in my district, and we were slotted. We were supposed to win that campaign. So I got up the next morning. I started looking at the data. My background is I have a Ph.D. in chemistry and physics from UT Austin. Don't hold that against me. It's a good department. The science department's really good. And I worked 17 years in the semiconductor industry at Motorola and Advanced Micro Devices, and I've got 4 U.S. patents on computer processing technology, making computer chips. And I've managed teams here in the U.S. and in Asia. And I'll tell you, I'm not the person you want to steal an election from. I know math. And so I got to work using an Excel spreadsheet and analyzing the data. And what I'm going to show you was really shocking. And I'll tell you, I went to bed one morning at 2 in the morning, and I laid down and told my husband, I think my election was corrupted, and I don't know what to do. And so we filed a lawsuit. We asked for a recount, and I'll show you what happened since then. So basically, I'm going to show you, how we vote in the state of Texas. There's counties across the state that do paper ballots, and there are counties that use electronic voting. Who in here really loves and trusts electronic voting? Okay, I don't see one hand. I don't see one hand go up. And I'll tell you what, we've had electronic voting in this state since about 2002 when it came in. And I have personally always been really leery of it, and now I know why. We've gotten data that no other candidate in the country's ever gotten on these electronic machines. So what I want to do is walk you through what the statutes say. What does the law say? I mean, how many in here have been on campaigns, worked on campaigns, been candidates? All of us, right, in this room. And, we worry about block walking, we worry about phone banking, putting those yard signs out, we kiss babies, and that gets us to the 1-yard line. What gets us into the end zone is making sure our election's not stolen. Candidates don't really worry about that. I didn't, and now I do. Okay, so we're going to walk through this. All right, the first thing, whoops.
Hit the X button.
The next, okay, go back. All right. This is the electronic voting machine that we use in Travis County. It's also what Tarrant County uses. It's the Hart intercivic voting system. And what you see is a ballot that's presented to you when you vote. It's on the machine, and you've got the boxes and all of that, and those votes go onto the electronic card, and it's called a mobile ballot box because the votes are on there, and they transfer these to the precincts after, in the machine in the precinct, and then they transfer them to the county to count them. This is the mobile ballot box. This is where the ballot is presented to the voters, and we select with this wheel. And this is what we use in about 100 counties in Texas. And I'm going to walk through the statutes. What does the Texas law say about how votes are counted and how we document what the computer said we voted? Texas legislature has done an absolutely phenomenal job putting some band-aids around electronic voting, and we're the best in the country. And we start out with this wonderful code. It's Texas Election Code 52, and it says, the vote in an election is by official ballot. Seems pretty simple. But in Texas, it's defined, and I'll tell you, there's other states in the country, they don't define it this way, but we do. Chapter 52, a vote in an election is by official ballot. Well, what's an official ballot? Well, the state law also tells you what that is. The first thing is, the state constitution says that an official ballot has to have a serial number. It's in the Constitution, and it's also in the election code. You can't vote on any old piece of paper in Texas. You have to vote on a ballot that has a serial number, so it's tracked. This law came into place in the 1800s. All right? The next thing is you got to have the name and the date of the election on the ballot. Well, pretty simple, right? The other thing is you have to have, I guess I need to point this way. You have to have voting squares to the left of the candidates' names. Everybody's seen that. The squares are on the left. The law says you have to do that. Okay? And you have to have voting instructions. Well, I'm going to show you a picture of a ballot from Travis County. This is a mail-in ballot. And what it has a serial number, it has the boxes, it has the candidate's name, it's got the name of the election on it. We're having struggles here. And then it also have instructions. And the bottom line is, this is a ballot. This is the absentee ballot. In my election, about 500 votes were cast on these official paper ballots. About 4,000 votes were on electronic, and that's where the problem came into play. Let's look at what the law says about what kind of records do you have to document what the computer said we voted. There's 3 records. The first one is the result tabulation. You have to have a computer that counts up the votes, and that's in the election code in chapter 128. You also have to have precinct returns. How many here have been election judges? Okay, y'all remember the tapes?
Yep.
The electronic tapes that are be printed? Okay, that's the election code. That's chapter 66, and actually chapter 65 says the judges have to sign them. Right? You sign them, you turn them in the envelopes. That's the law. That's what we say. All right, the third thing is a ballot image, and this is a new one. Candidates across the state have known this. Counties cannot produce a ballot image. What is a ballot? Serial number, boxes, candidates' names, date of the election, name of the election. That's what a ballot is. Well, chapter 128 says that you have to have ballot image storage. What's an image? Picture, PDF, JPEG, bitmap. Ballot, gotta have a serial number, image. No machine, electronic machine in the state can do it. We found this out according to the Secretary of State's Election Division Office.
Wow.
This was shocking. Candidates have called me from all across the state and said, we tried to do recounts, but they won't produce the ballot image. What they produce is something else, and I'm going to show you that. And you make up for your mind if that adheres to the state law. Okay, we're going to walk through this. All right. Well, you know you get to see the ballot, right? On the machine. It presents an image to you. Why doesn't it save it? It's supposed to have ballot image storage. We see it when we vote. You got boxes, you got all of it. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these tapes, and I'm going to show you what Travis County is doing and other counties across Texas are doing. there's many codes that talk about these tapes, these results tapes, precinct returns, originals, copies, and it's a thermal tape. And you judges remember printing these. Okay. Well, in my election, I want to show everybody who's not an election judge what this looks like. This is an old tape from one of my precincts in Travis County. This is what a tape looks like. It's a long tape, a thermal tape, and it has each candidate's name and the number of votes they got in that precinct. And this is an old tape when Dewhurst and Cruz were running. So that's a real tape from a judge who took it home. All right. In our election in Travis County, the county told the election judges, don't print the tape.
Don't.
Do not print the tape. And we got this in discovery. This is the judge's envelope, the JBC report from my precinct, the instruction to the judges, do not print the tally. What do y'all think of that?
Unbelievable.
Okay. Yes, you got it. So this was the first thing. You got to have 3 records. You got to have the ballot tabulation, you got to have a ballot image, and you got to have a tape. Ballot image is missing, the tape is missing in Travis County. And I'm going to show you this is going on all across the state. And the reason they didn't print the tape was because of a county-wide vote center. Has anybody heard of that? Okay. The county-wide vote centers allow you. Now Tarrant County still has elections by precinct. The county-wide counties, you can vote anywhere. Anywhere. And so the storage, yes, anywhere. It goes all over the state. This is occurring. Okay? Lubbock, El Paso, Travis County, many counties, Collin County, Fort Bend. So in these counties where you can vote anywhere, supposedly it just takes too flippin' long to print that tape. So the Secretary of State, Elections Division, has given waivers. Don't worry, don't follow the law. We'll give you a waiver. So that's how this happened. Okay? Don't print the tape.
Is that the current Secretary of State?
Yes. Well, the waiver is being done by the Elections Division, Keith Ingram. Where's Representative Goldman? Where's he? You are. You know Keith Ingram, right? You know Mr. Ingram?
I know him.
He's giving waivers all across the state. I'm going to show you. Okay. So, we also had, in our election, we had poll watchers. Now, poll watchers are supposed to sign the tapes. And to block the poll watcher is a misdemeanor. And so our poll watcher did an affidavit in our lawsuit. He said, I was prevented from signing the tape because election officials were instructed not to print them.
Wow.
So,
I had the sheriff make him let me sign it once before.
I know, I've tried. I've tried. We'll get there. So, big picture, when we saw the results that didn't make sense, we wanted a recount. And the county said, we can't recount those ballot images because we don't have them. And I'm going to show you what they gave us instead. So then we filed a lawsuit and said, you're not following state law. All right? Now, here's Travis County Clerk Dana Debevois, who's the top election person in Travis County. This is a statement on the witness stand. We asked her, Ms. Debevois, why aren't you following the law? And she said, well, I have a dispensation from Keith Ingram and the Secretary of State's office. And we said, well, what's the final law? She said, well, we said, can the Secretary of State's office tell you to break law? Can tell you not? She goes, absolutely. So we got her on, we did a little bit deeper. We said, well, what's the final law? She said, there's additional instructive directives from the Secretary of State's office that says we don't follow that law. And we asked her again, do you think the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow law? She says, I know exactly they can. Absolutely.
Wow.
We disagree with that. There's no statute in the Texas law that says the Secretary of State can ignore law. Okay? And so we asked her again, why did you not print the tapes? And she said, well, it would just be longer than a queen's train.
Oh my God.
The tape would be too long because of the vote centers, because of this countywide polling locations. And so basically, we're in this huge lawsuit when it sure would have been a lot easier to print those tapes. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Been a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to show you chapter 128. This is really an important key chapter in the election code. This is absolutely amazing. Chapter 128 talks about the computerized voting system and what the standards are. And it says you need a main computer to coordinate ballot presentation. You got to show people the ballot. You see that when you vote. You got to have vote selection. That's a little wheel. You got to have ballot image storage. Well, you're presenting with the ballot, and they want an image storage to happen. And you have to have result tabulation. This law has not been changed since 1997 when it was enacted. What was going on in 1997? Think about it. AOL had barely hit the scene. Netscape was an internet provider. Do you think the legislature in 97 trusted electronic voting machines? No. 97, they wanted multiple backup records, mutually exclusive data sets, a computer tabulation, and a ballot image storage. And what's a ballot? Serial number, blah, blah, blah. Image, it's a picture, plain language. And we don't have it. So in our election, the tape's missing, ballot image doesn't exist, so we got result tabulation, and what we found is that was corrupted. And I'll show you that. So my background is math, and I'm going to show you some math in a little bit. This is what the county said they could produce. Well, Miss Pressley, we can't produce a ballot image, but we can give you this cast vote record. Well, first of all, cast vote record is not even referenced in state law, but this is what they're producing. And this is what was produced, 4,000 pages, one per page of this. Cast vote record. Do you see a serial number? Date of the election, or name of the election, or boxes? No.
Wow.
This is not a ballot. It's not an image of a ballot. And it's not even an image file. From a computer science standpoint, this is a data structure, which is like an Excel spreadsheet. One line tells you how someone voted. This is what was produced, 4,000 of these records. And I'm like, where did this come from? It doesn't have even the date of the election on it. How can I use this in a recount? And so that's why we filed this lawsuit. Candidates from across the state have complained about this when they go to recounts and they say, well, we're just going to print out what the computer said you voted. But that's not what the law says. The law says a ballot image storage, a mutually exclusive data set to check and balance. Okay? This is not even an image file. Okay. All right. We have 4,000 cast vote records that supposedly tell us how the computer voted. How we voted in Travis County. And that, I'm sorry, this is not a ballot. It's not an image of a ballot. It's not even an image file. Okay. All right, so there were a lot of issues wrong with our election. And I want to walk through these. We had more ballots than voters' names during early voting. The county sent out lists of early voting people. You know, campaigns, you get the list. You take them off your block walking rolls. So we had the list of people that had voted in early, and almost every precinct had more ballots than names on that list. Okay, we saw that we asked for, it's called audit logs, computer audit logs. And you know, computers can document, time, date, stamp every activity that's on there. And so as a candidate and as a computer science person, we asked for the audit logs of the main counting computer. Okay, we got those and we showed those are corrupted, and I'll show you that. There were security breaches on the voting system. The seals were broken and resealed on many of them. There were extended logons on main computers. How many people in here who their computer logs off after 15 minutes? Yeah. Well, the county's computer was logged on for 10 days straight with no log off. I'll show you that. Obstructing the poll watchers. There was some statistical analysis. We're going to go over, and anybody that likes math will love that one. And then we had an expert give a report that said these voting tabulations, these ballot images that we can't discern. who won the election. Okay, so I'm going to walk through some of these. This is where we had more ballots than names. These are the precincts. These were the number of ballots cast in early. These are the number of names in early voting. And we had extra ballots than names. Now, in our election, we supposedly lost by 1,300 votes, about that much. And the county's like, well, Miss Pressley, you can't come up with 1,300 people. And well, I've got 80 right here. And 4,000 ballot images are missing. So yes, I have the 1,300 number. Interestingly, the only ballots that remained are those mail-in ballots, and we were tied exactly 240 to 240.
Wow.
And we've said we can't know the victor, so we need a new election. And I want an election with paper ballots if the machines can't do what they're supposed to do. Okay? You got it. Okay. Another issue was, let's skip through here. Here's the math. Who likes math? Anybody? Oh, I love it. Republicans are so smart. They're so smart. So what we did, I've managed engineers for a very long time, and I was an engineer. And I sat down one night and I said, if I were to steal an election, how would I do it? And how many people know the 80-20 rule in engineering? Okay. So, you focus on the big hitters. So I said, what if I looked at where the voters cast their votes, and 80% of the voters, and what precincts those were? So I looked at that. There are about 9 precincts where 80% of the votes were cast in my election. And I did an analysis that's a little bit different than most people would do. I took, in the runoff, there was a runoff in November, there was a general in November with 8 candidates, and there was a December election runoff. And I took the November and I said, I'm just going to use myself and my opponent and see what ratio he and I got and compare it to the general. And lo and behold, we found something really fascinating. Multiple precincts stayed the same. Exactly the same number, where thousands of voters had turned out, a lot of negative campaigning on my opponent's side. And I had a statistician, and I said, he saw this. He goes, well, Dr. Pressley, why don't you do this? Plot on the x-axis by precinct what you got in the general, and then what you got on the y-axis in the runoff, in the runoff, and do that for other candidates and see if there's a correlation. Okay, so we did that. So here's the math. This is one of the districts, not mine, but another runoff that happened. You kind of see a scatter plot. Another one, scatter plot, not real correlated. It's another one, and this one's mine. It's a straight line, slope of almost 1, and R squared of 0.98. This is not how it's supposed to look. That's a very straight line. These others are more random, kind of scatter plot. So this told me there was potentially a program that was targeting the same percent in the general as was in the runoff. So basically the numbers didn't really change a couple of percent. So this is where we said we want the audit logs, because if the tabulation's off, there ought to be some problem being shown on that computer. So we got the audit logs of where it was being tabulated. So again, 3 records are supposed to be there. The tape, well, that's gone. The ballot image, we don't have it. And now the tabulation. Was there a problem? So we got the audit logs. And think about how this works. You've got your voter, you vote, it goes on the card goes down to the county, and all the precincts send the cards to one place. The main county computer, tally computer at Central Count. So all these cards are coming to one place. So we wanted that audit log. So we got it. And what we found was really, really surprising. There were corruption errors on the memory cards. There were 9 times on election night, invalid, corrupt mobile ballot box. So our prediction is there may have been votes on those memory cards that maybe didn't get added, or there was a program that was flipping votes. To use the word corrupt in an electronic voting tabulation computer at the county, that's not good. That's the last thing you want to see. As a candidate, you don't want to see corruption. I mean, that's a pretty serious error, right? So the other thing was, it wasn't even random. It wasn't a random error. It was a corruption error, and then normal ballots were coming in on the other precincts from the mobile ballot boxes. And then corruption error, then the things are being added in normally. Corruption error, ballot box, corruption, ballots. It was very systematic. It wasn't just a random error. And so we asked for another audit log. We said, get us the audit log of where these memory cards are being programmed. So we got that. Let me back up. So we had an expert, so 9 times on election night, these are the pages of the audit logs, and these big boxes are where the corruption was occurring. 9 times on election night. Our expert witness said, my gosh, that's a documented hack scenario that was documented in 2007 by the Secretary of State of California that commissioned a report that Rice Professor University was on and a Stanford Professor University was on. And in that report, in 2007, this hack scenario was listed.
Wow.
It said, an adversary may introduce corrupt mobile ballot boxes into the legitimate flow of mobile ballot boxes from the precincts back to Election Central. And this could damage the credibility of the vote counting process. This was identified 8 years ago. And we saw it in those audit logs. Corrupt mobile ballot box. That was identified 8 years ago. So we said, who had access to these cards? Why did the computer not recognize it from the precinct as a normal card from the precinct? What we found was surprising again. We had audit logs that showed mobile ballot boxes being in a computer on 11/21 and not logged out until 10 days later. That's a security breach. Why are these mobile ballot boxes that have votes on them that can carry a program on it sitting 10 days straight, 24 hours a day, where anyone could have access? Okay? Again, we saw it again. Another error. Mobile ballot box loaded on 12/1, not logged out until 12/10. That's early voting. 9 days again. And on and on. We asked the judge in our case, we said, can we get to the election person that's putting in this card 9 times on election night? Was it 1 card? Was it 9 cards? The judge said no. We said, well, can we get to the card and see what kind of software is on the card? No. Ms. Pressley, you don't have any evidence, and we're dismissing the case with a no evidence summary judgment.
Whoa.
We had 12,000 documents, and we got dismissed on a no evidence summary judgment. And we respectfully disagree with the judge on this, and we're appealing. And there was a deal on the table. The judge sanctioned us $40,000 for a frivolous lawsuit because they don't want anybody else to bring a case against these electronic voting machines in Texas ever again. Whoa. And there was a deal on the table from the other side that they would not pursue the sanctions if we would not appeal.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we appealed. And we're the first candidate in the state that's ever done this. Candidates have complained, they've known about it, they've known that there were no ballot images, and no one didn't know, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to approach it. And I just think this is a perfect storm of a candidate with background in computer technology. This is complicated stuff, guys. This is hard. You talk to election lawyers, they don't want to deal with this. This is hard, this is technical, and there's a lot of math involved. So this is a very difficult thing, and it's expensive. So that's where we are. All right, I want to back up a little bit about a 30,000-foot view. And I want you to think about, when is your vote most secure? There's 3 times we can vote in this state. You can do early, you can do on election day, but you can also turn in a paper ballot by mail. And I want to walk you through, knowing what you know now about the statutes and what the laws are on the books, we're going to walk through what each one of these really means. Now, when you vote ballot by mail, a computer still scans it and adds up the vote. But what do you have? You've got a paper ballot as a backup. And it tells you, it's got a serial number and all that. What about early voting? It's interesting. The computer's tabulating the vote. We're supposed to have a ballot image. We don't have that. And there's no results tapes in early voting. Right, judges? You don't print them. There's no tape. There's only what the computer said you voted.
Really?
Election day.
No more early.
Computer tabulation.
Me too.
Ballot image, well, we don't have that. Results tape, yeah, except in those countywide polling locations, there's no tape. They're telling them not to print them. So when is your vote most secure? When's it least secure?
Early voting.
When are we told to vote?
Early.
That's right.
Whoa.
You only have what the computer said you voted on early. And I have candidates that have come to me and said, you know, Dr. Pressley, I won right here, and I won right here in my election, but I lost this, and I lost the whole election. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this right now. In Houston, there was a runoff. There was a Democrat and a Republican. The Republican won here, and he won here. He lost here, and he lost the election.
Wow.
There's no backup for early voting, guys. There's no backup.
Oh, man.
It's only what the computer said.
We gotta get that changed.
And I've just shown you those audit logs.
Yeah.
And actually, counties, we've talked to many counties across Texas, and they never look at the audit logs. They're kind of there. They don't really follow them. We don't know who put this corrupt card in Travis County. I'm not saying Dana Debavois or her staff did it. Could have been, who knows? Who knows who did it? The problem is, we don't get to see how the votes are counted. We don't. Okay. The problem with electronic voting is that it's very complex, and corruption can hide in complexity. When we can't see how the votes are counted, and we have to trust something else, that somebody's going to follow some procedure, corrupt cards are not going to be inputted, we got to think about it. So what are we asking for? Our case is in the appeals court right now. We finished our appeal brief, and the Third Court of Appeals is hearing it. We're asking for oral arguments. And what we're asking them to do is say several things in their opinion. We want them to render an opinion that the Texas Constitution and statutes requiring the counties to obtain these election records needs to be followed across the state. We've talked to many counties, those county-wide voting locations across Texas. No results tapes are being printed, early voting or election day. Okay, we've got laws saying that. Now, we want them to rule on the ballot image. The Secretary of State says that cast vote record is a ballot image. Do you think it's a ballot image?
No.
No way. I don't think it is either. And that's why we're filing this lawsuit. We want the Secretary of State to hold the counties to the letter of the law. Don't just give a waiver because it's inconvenient. When is convenience more important than the veterans in here who have sacrificed for our country?
Yes.
Okay? I'm sorry, is this what you served for? No, it's not. And it's not what I spent hours and hours and dollars on running as a candidate. I didn't sign up for this. We want the Secretary of State to acknowledge, we want the appeals court to acknowledge the corruption errors and vulnerability of these voting systems. And if the results in our election can't be ascertained, we need a new one. Where are the ballot images? Where are the tapes? Don't have them. Oh, and the electronic tabulation, that's corrupted. I don't trust any of those results. And it didn't match the polling location, the polling numbers that we saw before the election anyway. Okay, so what can counties do? Print the results tapes. You guys really need to think about early voting. Okay? You really need to think about that.
I'm not going there.
Never
We
again.
want counties to ask their clerks, can you print a ballot image? We've had clerks tell us, no, we can't do it. Even though the Secretary of State says it's a ballot image, it's not. We've had them tell us that one-on-one. There needs to be security at the main computers. All the votes get added up on election night. We can have poll watchers at the main computer watching for those errors, because they'll come up if there's a problem. I wished I had had a poll watcher that night at that computer 9 times. We would have called the sheriff. Okay, so that's what we can do. Now, I'm here for education, but I'm also here to ask for your help. If this presentation and what's happened to us in Travis County, what's going on across the state, moves you, I'm going to ask you for your financial help. We've got this lawsuit. We're the first candidate in the state to bring this. It's expensive. My husband and I have put in $80,000 of our own dollars on this case. We've raised about that same amount. We've got the brief paid for, but what we don't have paid for yet is the rebuttal brief to theirs and then the oral argument. So we need your help. So if you would consider donating, I really would be grateful. How many in here have the one-pager that we sent out? Or how many do not have it? How about that? I'm going to have Sheila hand it out, and it's got our information on it. And also I'm going to pass around. Let's pass these around. Would you help bring? Pass these around. Give me. Here's the envelope. Yeah. No, just have them sign.
Put this on the screen.
And this too. So we're going to pass around a spreadsheet that if you would give me your email address, I will keep you up to date on what goes on with our case. Because it's not just about little Travis County anymore and about my little District 4. This is bigger. This is a big thing that has to be done correctly. And we're pulling that up.
The sheets that you have coming around, I will be handing, if you'll get the hands up, you'll get the one-pager. The ones on the clipboard, if you give a donation, we do need to record that donation to be compliant. If you would please, address and name and amount, to
Laura Pressley lawsuit fund.
Laura Pressley lawsuit fund. Now, what she humbly doesn't talk about is when the 5 attorneys provided to her opponent from the Democratic Party of Travis County, and the 4 attorneys for Travis County is who she's been fighting. One lawyer and Laura. It is not up to one woman in the state of Texas to defend the integrity of the voting ballot for the entire state. And that's what's happening. When we discuss this with our legislators, it's kind of, well, we can't do anything because we're legislators. No, this is unacceptable. Well, yeah, I've had that.
You got Bill Zedler in there.
Now, when the judge said, Ms. Pressley, remember, she's asking for evidence. No, you have no evidence. Okay? Dan Mills, who used to be in, what district court?
Used to be in Burnett County. But I don't,
You can't say that, Sheila. Okay.
thank you, Sheila.
When the judge ruled, the appeal was, Your Honor, we would like the sanctions large enough to chill any future candidate from ever challenging the electronic voting system in the state of Texas. And that's what they hope. But all those sanctions of $40,000 personally, $50,000 to her attorney would go away if she didn't appeal. She's appealing.
Okay, so let's have questions. Yes, sir.
Have you let the other voters in Travis County know about this? And if you have they been actively going against the elected official who was chosen?
Yes, we have spread the word, and we are censored in a lot of cases in the public media in Austin. But we have gone to different groups like the Executive Committee of the Republican Party, and they really want to get their judges to print those tapes on the primaries. Because here's what's happening, guys. The primaries are coming up. And you've got the general. Is that better? Okay.
Did you say Tarrant County, they are printing the tapes?
Tarrant County is printing the tapes at the precincts on election night, but not early voting.
Do you want to sign this?
There's nobody, they don't print them.
You can request the ticket at the end of the day, but they are not required by law to give it to you.
Yeah, but the ticket is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the some-long results tape that showed each candidate, what each candidate got at each location. Now, some of the counties are considering printing them at, like, the next day or down at central count, but now you've lost chain of custody. It needs to be printed at the location before it leaves, in case there's a corruption problem later. You have a documented evidence of what the vote was. That's why printing it at the location, and that's what's being done at precinct voting. That needs to be done, I don't care how long it takes.
Seems like a no-brainer to me. We have a question over here, and I'm going around the room. I've got 4 questions lined up
Okay,
for
you
you.
bet.
Also to note, I believe you got red tickets. We'll do the drawing for that just as soon as we've done with Q&A, all right? Here you go, sir.
As another indication that things are not well done in Austin, you would think that in a situation like hers, you should be able to call up the state attorney general and say, I would like a ruling on this. The Secretary of State is doing something illegal. What is your opinion about this?
Don't lose my pen.
But I can tell you that I'm the president of a homeowners association, and we had a deal like this where the state legislature sent us some regulations for homeowners associations that could not be complied with. And so I wrote a letter to the state attorney general and asked for his opinion. And I have his response at home. I should have brought it. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but his letter says he cannot talk to citizens like me.
Whoa.
He can only talk to certified attorneys. And my daughter's a lawyer in a law firm of 45 attorneys. None of them were certified to talk to the state attorney general.
Wow.
What kind of crap is that?
Are we talking about
I don't know how to fix that. All right. Thank you.
Could you tell us who exactly you are suing?
Great question. In the state of Texas, you have to sue your opponent. So I sued my opponent, and he's represented by about 10 lawyers.
Why can you not sue the Secretary of State for not enforcing the law? And sue for attorney's fees and
But that's not
triple damages and all kinds of things. I mean, this is worse than Moscow, for God's sake. Another thing, look, I see a lot of people have been election judges.
Yeah.
I was an election judge, and I'm telling you, fooling with that electric thing and printing those tapes and getting it is very complicated.
It is complicated.
And when we were instructed about how to be an election judge, there were 200 people out there on Sylvania Avenue or wherever it is. And I know for a fact that probably 80% of those people had no idea of what they were doing with those electronic machines.
Yeah. Very complex.
You know, we just need to get
Yes,
those
ma'am.
regular paper ballots.
What is the RPT's response to this and how are they helping you?
Well, that's a great question. They're watching the case, is what I've been told.
I'm never voting for either.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you a story, a real quick story of a woman at the Tarrant County Tea Party that came up to me and she goes, Miss Pressley, the Lord told me not to vote early. And I said, my dear, he was right. And that happened at Tarrant County. Yeah.
I don't really want to ask a question, and just everybody in this room wondered how in the hell Obama got reelected with all the crap he did. Can you just answer the question?
You can do this in 100 ways. I've had engineers work for me that could do this behind their back. Okay? This is a 2000s Microsoft Office software, but I don't know that we can put enough Band-Aids or enough lipstick on this electronic voting pig, because we don't get to see how it's counted. We have to trust. And look what's happening.
Barry Schleck again. I'm pissed. And I'm very... I'm angry. I know there are people here that knock on a door for one vote.
You got
And
it.
you got electrons flying around down there.
4,000 in this
And
foul swoop.
I think if you tell us who to write to, who to call on this to get some sort of momentum going in this, I think most of us would do that.
Call Ken Paxton.
And Paxton is
Is he in jail?
Ask a millennial voter whether they think we should allow voting over the internet, and I guarantee you're going to get a huge number.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's going to be safe.
Question on the paper ballots.
No, it isn't.
They're scanned. And that scanner can be just as corrupt as any other piece of electronic. Is there ever any analysis where they actually spot check, go through, count the paper ballots and see how it matches the tape on the scanned ballots?
Yeah, there's errors there too, but you have a paper ballot to go back to hand count. So really, even the scanning is bad. Hand counted paper ballots, even though as cumbersome as it is, our world is, our country's dependent on this being right, guys. What's it worth? Ask the veterans in here what it's worth.
What about purple fingers?
I like the purple finger. I love it. I wish. Yeah, that's a great idea. You know, Israel, they have a clear box and they hand count them at the location. They never leave.
Israel
Laura,
does everything right.
I was fortunate enough back in the election to be in Ohio. Myself and Senator Bob Hall was standing outside at the voter place when they would come out after they voted, and then we were standing there, and the people would come up. We had probably 3, maybe 4, that would come out, and this was right before 7 o'clock. They come out and they would say, they would have tears in their eyes. I know one lady did. I voted for Romney, and Obama came up. I voted for Romney. Yep. 3 of those people I know for sure came out and said that. Now, last week,
really?
I went to Iowa, and we went to a little place called Mason City, Iowa. We were standing up there. We got out of the car at 10:30 that morning. It was 0. The wind was blowing and it was snowing. I walked up to the door and knocked on the door, and the guy came to the door and we told him who it was, and we were there for Ted Cruz. But the thing about it is, I was out there and there was probably, we had probably 40 or 50 people out there in that kind of conditions, wanting to, do the work, the hard work that it takes to get voters out there and vote. And then if they're stealing, what in the heck are we doing this for? We got to get mad, folks. We really do. This is important. And this lady is doing the job. And we need to support her.
Regarding the donations, if you'll just take one of those yellow pads, write your name, email, and phone number, and your dollar amount, and kind of wrap up your donation in it. It's not moving, so don't hold up for that on getting the donations. Yes, cash is good.
Cash? Yeah. Cash is $100 or less. That's the max you can do for a donation.
And also on our Facebook page, I loaded a lot of the commentary. She had some links to a story about her, and as well as a donation link, so if you want to do it online as well.
Thank you, thank you.
There you go.
Yes, sir, question?
What exactly did the judge say you had no evidence of?
I know. Great question. We had 12,000 documents, and a summary judgment against our case is one thing that we might have expected, but not a no evidence summary judgment. It's really difficult as a judge to prevent evidence and then say you don't have it.
What they say you had no evidence of, the judge had to obviously make a specific finding, right, to say that this, you had to prove this and there's no evidence of it. So what was the thing that they said that you had to prove that there?
Well, he said his judgment was that Cassville record was a valid image, so there's no evidence there. That's one of them. And he said we didn't have the 1,300 votes, and he said, well, we have 4,000 missing. So we disagreed. So it went like that.
One question I have, I think we're just about out of time for questions, we actually went a little long, is, question for you is, there are some organizations out there that believe in voter integrity, like True the Vote. Have you reached out to those guys?
We have, and we've shared our case with them. They've been very supportive. They do not support candidates specifically, but we did share all our information.
Seems like they would be a great one to tie directly into the Secretary of State voting elections.
Unless they want to give it to the to y'all.
They gotta have names.
All right,
Unless you do it to the
The
912.
lady right there.
yeah, she will take any donations you might have
For her.
I think we probably should go ahead and wrap, but if we could, you want to help me draw a couple names?
I would love to. Guys, I just want to say thank you and bless you for being
Thanks,
here.
round of applause
Thank
for
you.
Laura.
We're not giving up. Okay, let's draw.
This one is for the Mark Levin book.
Mark Levin book.
And, yeah, so,
The last four digits is
Half the state of the
1695.
country should be.
1695.
Did you get it? You're disqualified.
What, 1695?
no. All right, draw another one,
Keep
right?
going. All right.
Oh, okay.
Last four, 1805.
He voted twice.
1805, there we go, right there.
Good book.
Next one is the Fair Tax Book by Neil Morse. Say goodbye to the income tax and the IRS. Sounds like a good idea.
Last four, 1648.
1648. 1648. Going once. Going twice.
Okay, next one is 1811. 1811, 1811.
What's the number?
1811. Going once, going twice.
1690. 1690.
Oh, it's four numbers off.
All right, woohoo.
There we go, there's a winner. Fantastic. One more, America the Beautiful by Ben Carson.
I just
got
ordered
what
it.
made this nation great.
All right, by Ben Carson. 1753.
1753, bingo! Bill the Zen Zedler. Fantastic.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. And I'll be here for questions if you want to join.
Excellent. Remember 2 meetings in February. If you have trash, if you can make it to the trash can, that'd be great. And another round of applause for Laura.
What? February? 2 meetings.
Got it all right.
2 meetings in February. First and third Mondays in February. 2 meetings.
First and third month. I think it's like 1900, and I need like 1230. So that's my number of what I've done in my head. But I want to also get a t-shirt. That way, I just need to at least get signed for it. Okay, well, send me that so you got it. Sure. I'll see you. Are you coming? I'm not coming the first day, but I'm coming next week. To the Ark. Are you going to be at the Ark? Oh, I'll be there. Yeah, and I'll have petitions signed. Okay, I'll be at the Ark, so I can just do it there. Okay. I wish you were like this stretch. Move. Move out of DWG. Move. Like so. No, there's some nice houses in Interlaken. No, wait, not Interlaken. Is it Interlaken? That's still 4. Still District 4. Yeah. Never mind.
Everybody's so damn nice.